All right, everyone. Beijing Biden's weakness is really causing a lot of problems. China and Russia are planning to orbit a platform or put up a lunar colony on the moon, which would be definitely a shot across the bow in the space race in the technological and optics sense. Now you've got this, which is that China is sort of meandering or blundering into the concept of possibly attacking Taiwan. Of course, China's official policy is Taiwan's not an independent state, it's just a Chinese province. Taiwan's idea is we're the legitimate government. You're a bunch of commie thugs that overthrew the mainland. The legitimate government withdrew here, and we're all that's left of actual legit China. Of course, I believe in the latter because communism is a lie, but it's not recognized by many nations. That being said, first and foremost, there will be a pinned comment if you're watching this video on YouTube with the links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. You're not getting half of my content if you're not using them because 2 of my videos every day are exclusive to those 4 sites and not on YouTube. So keep in mind, I'm making 4 videos. You're only getting 2 of them if you're using YouTube. I'm trying to incentivize people to use alternatives because the writing is now on the wall with big tech. They're going to be weaponized by the political establishment to persecute people who have views outside of the lamestream. We're already seeing it. This, by the way, includes leftists, but a lot of them are blind to this fact and think that Gab and BitChute are just Nazi echo chambers full of conspiracy theorists, and so they're not making any attempt to find alternatives. That's going to hurt them. The next tech paradigm is not going to belong to the progressive so-called. Just so that we're aware, I think that the gravy train has already left the station. Now they're going to have to get an Uber in order to catch up to the train. It'll take some time. But anyway, Biden is weak. He's a friend of Beijing. It's been fairly explicitly made clear that China controls Beijing Biden to some extent. This is fairly obvious. It's not just Biden. And you need to understand, when we talk about Chinese authoritarianism or their imperialistic efforts, you're not just talking about China. Keep this in mind. China's intelligent. Globalism is something that China has bought into heavily since they opened up to the world economy at large decades ago. This initially was a U.S. attempt, and it was a very, very flawed one, to draw China out of the dark ages of communism into westernization. Economically, it worked. China is no longer a puristic communist nation when it comes to its economy. But the authoritarianism never went anywhere. By the time the West decided to bring up human rights abuses and slave camps and putting dissidents in the rock quarry and harvesting organs from Falun Gong dissidents and going after Tibet and stuff, by the time that became a thing, China's economy was already too large and too intrinsically linked to exporting cheap goods that it got the U.S. addicted to, like crack, to actually be cracked down on. China invading Taiwan, I think, would be somewhat difficult. Number one, China doesn't really have any live combat experience for its troops. It would end up presumably facing off against the U.S. Navy, and I think that even if they won, casualties would be so atrocious it'd be a Pyrrhic victory at some point. But it is something that China might attempt. China is now emerging as the main bipolar competitor to the United States, the main country of what's left of the Eastern Bloc. The unfortunate part is the U.S. can never bring its full diplomacy or trade war to bear because the U.S. is so globalized. That is, that China supplies a lot of cheap goods that drive down the prices and the wages, by the way, of U.S. materials. People, the lower classes in the U.S. are obsessed with buying cheap Chinese shit from Walmart. Corporations that buy into the U.S. political system have deep pockets and deep relations with China. And all of them, this is why Trump got flack so much. At the end of the day, the main reason why Trump faced a wall of propaganda from the MSM and from big tech is because all these groups are trying to invest in China. They're all trying to get their foot in the door. Google being, by the way, one of them. You'll remember that Google got in trouble once because they were trying to develop a browser, a Google browser for China, and the Chinese said, that's fine, we can use Google browser, but you need to geolocate everything so that if someone posts something naughty, we can throw them in the gulag. And then they pulled back on it when everyone shrieked about human rights abuses, and then they went right back to designing it, and I'm not even sure exactly that it's clear what's happening now. Beijing, Biden, and all of these others in the United States have been compromised by globalism. The unfortunate part is China is one of the main linchpins of globalism because it's an exporting muscle. They've deliberately misused the situation to cause that to happen. This is why Trump faced the propaganda. It was all about money. U.S. corporations got worried that he was going to make good on his trade war. He began the first overtures of that. Everyone freaked out thinking, oh my God, if the U.S. adopts a more populistic stance, I'll have to pay my workers more. We'll have to make more U.S.-based products. My bottom line will be smaller. Oh my God, I'll have to close up a factory in China. I can't have this. Quick, I got to donate money to the Democratic Party or to some rhinos. When you see a laundry list of all the never-Trump Republicans with Romney and the Bushes and stuff, that's because they're globalists. When we think of these entities as separate from one another, the Saudi royal family, the Chinese Communist Party, the Democrats and many Republicans, the neocon side in the United States, the Tory party and Labour, all of the main parties in many of the major players of the world, Putin, all of these people are inseparable. One hand washes the other. They're part of an elite cabal of a few tens of thousands of individuals that own massive corporations, big banks, and run the political complexes in a plurality of nations in the world. And they use that firepower and that muscle to potentially invade any independent competitors that spring up. That's really what the game is about. That's why they can, big corporations, why do you think that they're allowed to violate the law at a whim and they never get in trouble for it? Well, isn't that kind of the same as what happens to politicians? I wonder why it's so similar. These people are all in bed together. They pretend on TV they act like they dislike one another. When you get a genuine maverick cropped up, usually there's a coup or a wall of propaganda against them. Key reason why I still support Trump. There's a reason for that, because I observe the behavior of all of the people that I know are corrupt. I know are dirty, corrupt, and warmongering, and they all seem to fucking hate him. That's a pretty good indicator that he's not one of the bad guys, because they seem to genuinely fear him actually bringing about a populistic reprisal. Why do you think that the U.S. Capitol right now is fencing around it? There's a reason for that. But Biden is weak and corrupted by globalism. Probably even more than like the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes. One of the key globalists, I would argue. And so China now can at least think about the possibility of invading Taiwan. Now, in a sane world, we would give Taiwan a few nuclear weapons. That's all you have to do. You don't need to allow them to have a program. You just host some U.S. nuclear weapons there and make it clear if this plot of land is attacked, we're going to strike you with nuclear weapons. We're not going to allow you to steal U.S. nuclear technology. You can't invade Taiwan because then you start a nuclear war. That is a deterrent. It's a practical deterrent as well. You don't need to threaten to flatten China or even put yourself on a war footing. Just have enough assets in the region that China's not willing to bombard the island for fear of killing a bunch of U.S. troops or detonating a nuclear warhead or something. That's all you have to do. Will Beijing Biden do this? No. Now, if Taiwan is invaded, will the U.S. actually act? And supposedly we're supposed to help them in such a situation. I don't know. I think it'd be more likely that the South Koreans or the Japanese would get involved than the United States. Someone like Biden would be, number one, very hesitant. He's not even in control, but someone with his particular principles, if he were, would be hesitant to get involved on a good day. But then when you also say, well, Hunter was making all sorts of money off of China. You've made presumably tens of millions of your dollars off of backroom deals in China. Probably have illicit holdings in China because, he's a sleazy politician in an empty suit. All your friends, all your donors do business in China. All of your political buddies do business with China or have donors who do so. You're all part of this one world cabal. Do you really think that he would be willing to attack the Chinese? I don't think so. I think that Beijing Biden at the end of the day would back down, and then the United States regime would have to concoct some cockamamie excuse as to why there was an extenuating reason. We didn't want to risk nuclear war. We didn't want to risk Armageddon. Well, we have an agreement with Taiwan on paper, but the practical aspect just wasn't there. Our carriers just weren't in the sea at the time. Supposedly we would be able to act, but our carriers were 1,000 miles away. Coincidentally, by the way, right before China decides to invade, they get sent elsewhere. The Japanese are asking us not to invade, something like that. There'd be excuse making. And a lot of people, because they're lemmings, and because they like to believe good-sounding lies, they would actually believe it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you to all of the 10 people who actually voted for Beijing Biden. Honk honk. It's just a joke, YouTube. Thank you to you, because now there's a new space race. There'll probably be a new arms race, let's face it. And Taiwan, an ally of ours, might be flatlined. I don't think China's crazy enough to do that because the casualties would mount so much. The problem is the only way they could feasibly invade Taiwan, bombard it first, wreck it, ruin it completely, which would be seen as genocide, or they'd have to do a beach landing. They'd have to have like repurposed fishing vessels and shit shipping in their massive manpower, and they would have to bombard anyway with missiles of one sort or another. Now, it would be insane. And again, if you see the U.S. Navy suddenly leave the South China Sea, then you should probably, if you're in Taiwan, you should probably start preparing. The Taiwanese government should pass a comprehensive Second Amendment style thing and weaponize its population. Why don't you do that? Every citizen in Taiwan should have much more than just military training. They should have military weapons at all time. Then there'd be a gun behind every blade of grass, and that strategy would be more likely to save you than Beijing Biden will. That's about all. Peace out.